I am joined by former communications director for the White House Situation Room, police officer, carpenter, pastor, beach bum, and most notably, the most prolific anti polygraph crusader in the United States and an original American badass, Doug Williams. Thank you so much for joining me.
And a five-time convicted felon, compliments of the United States federal government polygraph industry.
Now, I didn't know.
Five, five, count them, five felony charges for teaching someone how to relax when they answered a relevant question and how to think of something scary when they answered a control question. I got 2 years in prison and 3 years on supervised release where I was completely put out of business for doing that.
And that's something we're definitely going to unpack in a little bit. I wanted to go right back to the start, before getting into that. But I mean, and when I say before getting into that, I mean, even before you became a polygrapher, let alone an anti-polygraph crusader. In your
Yeah.
book, which is a great read, by the way, False
Well,
Confessions.
thanks to Jack Straw. He's a great writer. I tell you, he's not only a good writer for books, he is a great music writer and a musician par excellence. He's got some songs out that he just is introducing to Nashville now that you'll be hearing on the charts very soon. He's the most talented guy I ever saw in my life. But anyway, he's the one that has the credit for the book. I'm just a crazy old crusader that ain't got sense enough to stop, and he's smart enough to make it into an interesting story.
And a good talker too, which I imagine helps out all writers. So in that, speaking of good stories, right? This is what I wanted you to get you to do, just kind of paint a scene for us. So there's a rather dramatic story in that book about how you first crossed paths with the polygraphs. This is way before you became a
Yeah,
polygrapher yourself. Would you mind kind
yeah.
of retelling that for us?
That was a weird experience. It was totally unexpected, and without any warning whatsoever. I had no idea. I mean, they make a big deal out of it now. When you go get your polygraph, you have to schedule it in advance and all the CIA and all that shit. Well, it was one of those deals where, in order to get my job in the first place, I wasn't the director, communications director. I was communications advisor to Presidents Johnson for 3 years and Nixon for 6 months, and my job was to handle all the eyes only messages that came into the White House from the various agencies, civilian and military, and so that required a very, in fact, my security clearance was so high. I never could understand this. My security clearance was so high that one of the terms of my security clearance was itself classified. Now, that never made sense to me, but part of the name of my security clearance was actually classified. Where, yeah, anyway, it makes sense of that. Anyway, so in order to get that job, I was just military. I mean, they pulled me out of tech school, throw me up there. So it wasn't anything I did of any great value. I was no big deal. The only thing I had was a clean background and never got caught, basically. And so in order to get that job, though, you have to simultaneously pass background investigations from every agency whose material you will be handling, which is every agency in the government, CIA, NSA, everybody. So you have to, and if any one of them blackballed you, you're out. So they had to go through a big pool to get the few guys that were left. Anyway, so I got through all that, took my 30-day leave, got my civilian clothes on. They had you wear civilian clothes, never wear a uniform, and wear business suits. And so they said, it gave me this number to call when I flew into D.C. So I caught a plane, flew into D.C., and called that number. It was a Marine Corps guard from the White House, picked me up in a limo, took me over to a place over in Georgetown, a little underground parking garage of some sort, and pushed a button. There's a guy standing up there on a platform with an M16, and kind of ominous looking. You pull in there. Anyway, it's completely empty and dark, except for one hallway that was open on the right hand side of the deal. And he said, "All right, get out and go down to that room at the end of that hall." He said, "I'll be waiting for you when you come back." Okay, so I get out, toddle down the hall. I walk in there, and there's a big fat bald guy smoking a cigar. It's claimed he is from the CIA, and it was like, what the hell's going on here? I mean, he was sitting there with his old gray government desk, leaning back in his little roller chair, and had a chair for me with an armrest on the front of it, in front of the desk. He had the instrument. I didn't even know what the fuck it was. It just had tubes out of it and straps and what have you, and dials and needles. And it was the old analog polygraph. Anyway, he says, sit down. So I was being a soldier, do what you're told, sit the fuck down. I sat down, and says, he's on that table now. Bear in mind, on that table, there's a polygraph, all the instruments for pneumo tubes and all that shit. And then the government issued 45 automatic. I'm sitting there looking at all the stuff he's got on the desk. And he says, sit down. Okay, so one or two things going to happen here. I said, oh, okay, what? He says, I'm going to take you. You ever taken the polygraph test before? I said, no, I don't know what a polygraph test is. Well, it's a lie detector. He said, if you fail this lie detector, I'm going to take this 45 and blow your fucking head off. But if you pass it, then you get to go work in the White House. So that's one of those two things going to happen here. And I said, well, do I get a vote on whether to proceed? Trying to put a little laugh. But he wasn't laughing. He wasn't fucking, no crack, no smile, no nothing. Sit the fuck down. So I sat down. Anyway, he hooked me up and asked me all kind of questions and stuff. And turned around and says, okay, get on back. I said, that's it. That's it. That was my first polygraph where I had no idea. And I don't know, but what, he could have probably done it. I mean, those guys, when it comes to security back then in 1969 or 66, 66 when I went in, it was a serious fucking matter in 66 because the reason the more intense the government gets about their secrets, the more you know they got a hell of a lot to hide. And that's the way it was in 1966. I mean, there was all kind of shit going on. I mean, Kennedy had just been killed. We started a fake war in Vietnam, some kind of phonied up Gulf of Tonkin incident. And there was all kind of bullshit going on. And there I was, had it up there, sat down behind a desk and read every damn message the president read, received, and sent for the next 4 fucking years. And they were not going to take any chances. But yeah, that was my first experience.
Yeah. As I say, quite a story. By the way, Doug, just as kind of fair warning, I usually when I do interviews, I'm more conversational. I know it's kind of unnatural, me just kind of sitting there nodding my head the entire time.
Uh-huh.
I'm just doing it that way because I want to have as much kind of straight audio as possible of you to pull. So that's why I'm not being very interactive.
Sure.
And so okay, so that's how you first met the polygraph, and it'll be quite some time before you became a polygrapher yourself. So how did you become a polygrapher after you left the White House?
Well, I joined the police department because they were giving a 6-month early out if you joined the police department in your hometown because they were out of young men to join the police department because they were shipping everybody to Vietnam. So they came along with this program saying, we'll give you 6 months early off your enlistment if you'll join the police department in your hometown. I said, well, I'm gone. I'm out of here. Boom. So that's how it ended up. And then, see, I got 69 on the police department, and I was working. I worked a couple of years patrol, and worked up in headquarters. And I was trying for a detective, but I wasn't really getting anywhere. And I said, man, it's a long haul to make. And I was really had my sights on. I wanted to get to be a sergeant and then move on up to FBI or something like that was my 10. Anyway, I was cruising down the hall, and I see this notice for a job opening in the department. They wanted a polygraph operator, and it held the rank of sergeant. Immediate promotion to sergeant. Oh hell, that's for me, man. So I took it by storm. I went home, studied all about I could find about polygraph and all that, and then I sat there in front of the mirror for hours at a time. I composed every question that could possibly be asked of me during an interview process, every one I could possibly think, and then memorize my answers to those questions, and then I would sit in front of the mirror and practice my delivery to make sure it was sincere enough and what have you. And I got the job. So that's how I got it. As a quick way to promotion.
Kind of funny. It sounds like you almost figured out how to beat polygraphs before you figured out how to beat polygraphs. Um, so you you interrogated thousands of people over those years while you were a polygrapher. Before you,
Yeah, about 1,000 or so.
yeah, about okay, so a lot of people. Put it that way. Um, uh,
Yeah.
and that and then eventually you obviously reason we're talking today is you end up dedicating your life to fighting it. Did you have a sort of come to Jesus moment, Doug, or was it more of a gradual process?
Oh, I knew from the get go, from day one. I knew it was bullshit. I absolutely was certain this is bullshit. There ain't no damn way they can detect deception with this contraption here. But I also knew it was one hell of a good prop for a good interrogator. And if there's one thing I was a damn good interrogator. And I thought, boy, I can use this to good advantage here. And so I said, I'll go back. I'll bust me a bunch of criminals with this son because I will scare the shit out of them, which I did. But I knew from the get go it wasn't no lie detector. In fact, I had a guy I met the first day. He was a retired FBI agent. He paid his own way to that school. Cops sent me, but he paid his own way because he was going to use that as a second career. First day we got out and we were going to go grab a bite to eat afterwards. He said, "You know this is a fraud, don't you?" I said, "Hell yes, it's a fraud. There's no question about it." He said, "I cannot do this." I said, "Well, I don't got no choice. I mean, they sent me down there and they paid my way. Plus, I can see how I can use this to my advantage interrogating criminals. I mean, I guarantee you I can do some good with it. Now, I know it ain't a lie detector and I'm not going to use it as one, but it's a damn good prop for an interrogator." He said, "Well, you're right about that." So anyway, that's the whole school. Was 90% of it was interrogation techniques. The rest of it just, yeah. By the way, here's the chart.
So yeah, so you always knew it was bullshit, but I guess what I'm getting at is that for a good amount of time you knew it was bullshit, but it puts food on the table, whatever. So was there kind of one initiating moment where you went, I have got to.
It was a it was a combination of things. It was like, well, actually, I joined the. I used to make a lot of money off duty running those damn things. Man, there's a lot of money to be made. You know, in the United States alone, it's a $4 billion a year industry with a B. $4 billion a year running that scam. All right, so I was making a lot of money. I mean, back in 1969 or 7, when got back from high school, from a polygraph school in 72, I was making probably $700-800 a month as a sergeant. I could make I could make that every week running polygraph tests off duty easily. And so I signed up and started working off duty running pre-employment polygraph because back then everybody had to take polygraph tests to get a job, whether it's a store clerk or bank teller or whatever. And so I'm making a lot of money at it, but it was I never did I never did get as corrupt. I was a little bit corrupt because I'd lied about how it worked and convinced people it worked when I knew damn well it didn't. But I wasn't as bad as most of them. It's sickening after a while. Like, for instance, they'd brag in their little meetings. Well, I hit Eckert Drugs, which is a local drugstore here. I hit Eckert Drugs for 20 tests to fill 2 openings. Well, see what that means is making $150 a head in 1972 to run a 15-minute test, and he deliberately failed as many people as he could so he could keep cranking them through there to fill 2 fucking openings. That's wrong. There's no other way to frame it. That's wrong. Now, they started taking it even further. They started using it as a requirement in the federal government. Every job with intelligence or police or any law enforcement in the federal, state, or local government has to take a polygraph test. That's bullshit. We're relying on a total fraud to protect our national security. And then finally it just gets to be an all. And then finally I said, well, at least it does measure something. I mean, it measures nervousness, and we got to figure out why the guy's nervous. Maybe it means he's lying. Maybe half the time it don't, but it measures something. And so it is of some value. I kept telling myself that until I figured out how to control every tracing on the chart myself. And I said, oh, that's prima facie evidence is worthless. So if it's being abused to that degree, my first goal was just to get it outlawed in the private sector where 16-year-old girl didn't have to go in there and go through all that bullshit just to get a job as a clerk. And I was successful in doing that. But it still needs work to do in the federal government.
So, eventually, very, very recently, in fact, as you kind of alluded to, just as we were starting up, the government finally managed to sort of put you away for a while, which yeah, and again, as you sort of alluded to, it's pretty shocking to me because intuitively, I mean, I think most people wouldn't imagine that there's really a crime that training people to manage their fight or flight response would fall under. So what's the story behind how they put you away in prison for 2 years?
They couched it in terms of that I was doing this so that I could defraud the government or get a guy a job that he wasn't qualified for. And they literally lied about everything. They lied about everything the government said in court was a lie, and everything I said was the truth. Believe that or not, but it's the truth. So they set it up and made it appear as though my intent was, when they knew damn well it wasn't my intent to do that. But that's how they made it look, and they twisted it around, and they tailored the tape. Like for instance, this first guy called me and begged me. He just begged me and begged me and begged me. In fact, my lawyer was marking it down 21 times. I told him no. I gotta come over. I gotta teach. I gotta learn. Please help me. I'm gonna pass this to the first undercover agent. 21 times I said no because it was fishy to me. I smell a rat. I said there's something wrong here. I'm not going to help you do this. Finally, he says, to conclude our conversation, well, man, I'm not trying to beat anything. I'm not trying to get away with anything. I already told him everything I did. I looked the other way when my friend brought in some coke. I just don't want to be accused of something I didn't do, so I got to learn how to pass the test. That changed my mind. That's called exculpatory evidence that I had no intent to help him lie, rather help him prevent being falsely accused of deception. However, when they played that tape in court, that exculpatory evidence was strangely missing.
So that's how they did it, I guess.
Yeah,
just they lied, right?
It's easy to throw someone in prison if you lie about every fucking thing.
Yeah.
I could have done that easy when I was a cop. If I'd have got up on the stand and lied about every fucking thing, there wouldn't nobody keep escape from prison from me. Because I can lie very convincingly. So can the government, and they do it on a regular basis.
Now, you mentioned in your book that a polygrapher's goal is to get a confession at all costs. I'm interested to know what's the motive behind that. By that I mean, like, if someone appears truthful, right, and they pass the test without training, then they're more likely than not innocent, or like it's no better than 50-50 at very least, put it that way. So what's to gain? This is like not morally, just like from a pure position of self-interest. What's to gain?
Well, all these polygraph operators own the polygraph firms that contract with the government to run these tests. They charge $2,200 per head. So they have a vested interest in failing as many people as they can so they can keep cranking out that $2,200 a head. They have a documented 70% failure rate for people who have already passed a very thorough background investigation. That's bullshit. Secondary motive. It justifies their existence. Look at what this guy admitted to me that you guys would never have found out had it not been for me. Boy, he's got some deep, dark secrets that were hiding in there, and I'll weasel them out of him. But boy, you better owe me, because he could have slipped through if it hadn't been for me.
When you first figured out how to sting the polygraph, as you say, what was your first big breakthrough with your method? When did you kind of have your light bulb moment, and what was the light bulb moment?
Well, really, what does it? It's kind of a. I had some buddies of mine came in. I was starting my day shift, and they were finishing up the midnight shift. They came in for a cup of coffee, and they was telling me about a chase they got into the night before. But man, he was chasing this son of a bitch. He was shooting at us, we was shooting at him. My partner lost control of the car. We went out across the bar ditch, tore through a barbed wire fence. Said, "Man, Pucker Factor was way up there. Man, I was pinching donuts out of that seat." I thought, Pucker Factor. I heard that in Vietnam. Say Pucker Factor. That means you're going down a trail scary as hell, and your asshole's tightening up because you know you're going to get shot in the next second or two. So I said, okay, well, that's a physiological response to fear, isn't it? I hooked myself up to polygraph, tightened up my anal sphincter muscle like I was trying to stop a bowel movement, blew out the best cardio tracing you ever saw. Now I know how to control everything. I know what the breathing pattern looks like, and I know the GSR mirrors the blood pressure. Because blood pressure increased, GSR goes along with it. I got control of everything. Now all I got to do is figure out which question to switch, when to react, when not to. And I've got it wired.
Well, what about the sweating?
The what?
The sweating.
The GSR is sweating. GSR, galvanic skin response, is your sweat activity in your hand, and it mirrors your blood pressure and pulse rate. You increase that, your sweat activity increases. Decrease that, so you don't have to worry about it. It's an autonomic nervous system response to your blood pressure.
Oh, I hadn't figured that out. So the cardio and the GSR are kind of redundant.
They are absolutely mirrors.
Why do they still have them then? Like why don't they just go with the one that's
all? It's pop. You can't just have some. I mean, look at Wizard of Oz. What would it look like if it was just a little man up there? You got to have your props. The Wizard of Oz. Don't pull the curtain back. See if it's just a little man back there. No, it ain't going to get it. Got to have a wizard up there. And that's what the polygraph is. He makes a little polygraph chump look like the Wizard of Oz because of his power the polygraph has. But he's just a wormy little asshole, really, hiding behind a curtain of deception.
It's 100% aesthetics.
Beg your pardon?
It's just 100% for aesthetic effect.
The only thing they take it, the only reason for existence is for them to unjustly enrich themselves at the expense of their victims. There is no other reason for their existence.
And since the sort of sphincter breakthrough, I know that you've kind of kept refining your system. What is, I mean, without giving away the tricks of the trade or whatever, as much as you can. Yeah, but what's your
no real deep dark secret? I started off years ago, back in '79, when I wrote my first manual, just using the muscle contraction, anal sphincter muscle, and memorizing breathing patterns. And that would work pretty good, but except then the polygraph guys kept catching on and said, oh, well, that's a manipulated response, blah, blah, blah. So I had to turn it into more of a naturally appearing response. And then I'll taught people mental imagery, where they'd image in their mind something calming or something frightening. And that worked pretty good too, but I never was real sure of it until the last few years. Now I introduced a hypnosis script, and when they label the questions as relevant questions during the hypnosis, I implant within them a post-hypnotic suggestion, and they will automatically go to the beach upon labeling the question as relevant. So that takes care of any problem at all of having any reaction on any relevant question. Then the only job is to conjure up a reaction on at least one control question by thinking of something frightening, which is basically a no-brainer. So I'm batting 1,000% right now. I know nobody believes that, but I am batting 1,000. I can teach anyone, anytime, anywhere to pass any polygraph test given by anyone, anytime, anywhere. It will be not only undetectable, but it will be a perfect chart.
It's actually one thing I wanted to follow up with you at some point. Just in terms of why you want the reactions being a certain way. So you say that you want the ideal thing is for the reaction to the control to be larger than the reaction to the relevant. And I've always been a little bit confused by that. Like, I would have thought that if the reaction to the control is larger, that would, if anything, point toward that I'm manipulating the test. I would have thought, again, just intuitively, what you'd want is for the reaction to the control and control to be the same.
We can't do that. We can't sit here and evaluate the polygraph technique because it's bullshit.
Right.
So what we got to do instead is we got to say, okay, what are your rules?
Uh-huh.
What do you say constitutes a perfect, truthful chart? They say, and they act accordingly, if you have no reaction on any relevant question and you have a reaction on at least one control question, then you have passed the test, truthfully. Because why? Because that little squirrely question about whether you ever stole anything from someone who trusted you bothers you more than all the really important questions. Don't make sense, but that's the way it is because they're mixing apples and oranges. There's no way you can compose a control question that has the same emotional impact as a relevant question. They try to do it, but it doesn't work. So we're not going to evaluate their technique. I can do that myself. I teach people how to play by their rules and produce what they say they want to see.
So there's not even really a logic behind the whole control relevant.
But it's their bullshit, so we play into their bullshit.
Fair enough.
In other words, they make the game. That's how they make the game played. That's how we'll play it.
One thing about your method, which you were talking about, the visualization, going to the beach whenever they ask the relevance. The thing that would kind of worry me if I was trying to pass a polygraph and going with this, and it seemed to have worried at least one of your clients from the kind of video meeting I watched, is that like some people aren't as good at quieting their mind and visualizing.
As I've taken that all out of your hands, see. When I put you through that hypnosis, I stole that part of that hypnosis script. I stole part of it from the Lamaze Natural Childbirth, where they teach women to have babies without pain. I stole part of it from a dentist who pulls teeth under hypnosis without any pain. And then I added it to the polygraph, where it's composed entirely and hooked up entirely to the polygraph test. I then run through there the hypnosis script, and when they are hypnotized, they do exactly what I tell them to do because they are hypnotized to do it. And then I implant with them, like I said, a post-hypnotic suggestion that when they use the trigger word, relevant question, before they answer the relevant question, that automatically triggers that post-hypnotic suggestion, and they go to the fucking beach whether they want to or not.
Fair enough. Now, polygraphers will often say that they've established countermeasures over the years, as manuals like yours have come out. Doug, is that 100% bullshit, or like merely say 98% bullshit?
Well,
what if anything can they do to detect someone gaming the system?
Let me tell you a little story about the sting technique. I wrote that manual in 1979. I testified in Congress in 1985 to enact the Employee Polygraph Protection Act. From that came a conversation with Representative Pat Williams from Montana, who hooked me up with a position on the, what was it called? Technology assessment for the Congress. And they were assessing whether polygraph worked. Put me on there. I went to their little conference as a full member. I told them, this is a joke. I can teach people how to beat it real easy. I do it all the time. So you're wasting your money using it. Okay, right after that, the head of the federal government polygraph school came to me and asked permission to use my manual to train his polygraph operators in countermeasures. I said, sure, fine. Use it free of charge. So they've known since 1985 that this was happening. They knew they had no defense against it, but yet they persisted in using it. Well, then they said, okay, we'll just straighten this out. In 1995, they commissioned a study to determine whether, in fact, my sting technique actually worked. And they determined with 1 hour or less, 95% of the people who used that technique were successful in passing the polygraph test. 95%. What did they do? Did they go to their supervisor and say, well, we're running a scam here. This thing really doesn't work. Somebody can teach you how to beat it that easy. No, they classified that report top secret and kept it to themselves.
So the only way that someone can get caught trying to game the system, because there are people who are called out for trying to implement countermeasures. Would it?
Oh, they blame everybody on it. But see, that's the thing of it is, they can't prove it. But see, the thing, they keep doing that. They're going to keep going and keep going. And then they're going to get themselves, their ass in the crack, because we'll end up suing them. But we're just giving them enough rope now to hang themselves. But we got a lot of plans in mind for those polygraph guys. Oh, do we ever?
On a similar note, like one objection I've seen from polygraphers is, oh no, what it reads is not simply stress or nervousness or what have you. And one of the clips that hopefully we'll be able to review at some later point, the polygrapher even proactively reassures her subject without him saying anything. She proactively reassures him that that's a misconception. So again, similar note to the last question, Doug. Is there even a scintilla of truth to that? As in, do they maybe have something in mind when they're saying that, or are they just knowingly lying about what the polygraph can do in terms of separating nervousness from deception?
They're trying to bluff him and trying to make him think. But let me just put it this way: in every polygraph test, in every polygraph examination, there is always, always, always at least one liar, and that liar is the polygraph operator himself. He lies about everything about that thing from the time you get there to the time you leave. Complete total lies. Proven lies.
What does the lie detection cushion or activity sensor pad do exactly? So the claim is that it detects extremely minor physical movements, which I'm sure it does. But that doesn't really seem all that relevant. Like, what difference does it make if I move my left foot a little, for instance? Like, is it essentially just there to monitor whether or not you're clenching your anal sphincter or whatever, or what's the idea behind why that helps?
Yeah, developed that as a counter to my sting technique of tightening the anal sphincter muscle. But the problem is the only way that would work is if the subject allowed them to insert it into their asshole, which nobody's going to do. So it's just like the polygraph. It's just a prop.
It's
just a prop. Everything on that desk, including the attitude and the atmosphere around there, is a prop. It's all designed to get a confession. It's the whole point of a polygraph is to get information.
aside from the cushions, and aside from results maybe being a little bit more immediate than they were in the past, and they're digitized now. Aside from those basic things, have there been any fundamental advancements in polygraph technology since Keeler incorporated sweat detection in the late 20s, early 30s, or thereabouts?
No, yeah, they invented it in 1920, so it's 101 years old today, but they haven't changed it at all, not one bit. It used to trace the tracings out on paper. Now it does on a computer screen. That's the only change. Other than that, it's exactly the same it was when it was invented in 1920.
I think, not to be nitpicky, I think Keeler added the GSR a little bit later. So, like, the first one.
Well, but see, the thing of it is, as you said, GSR is just a prop. It's just a redundant little needle up there mimicking the blood pressure. So what did he accomplish by adding? Oh, well, I got that. Well, I'll watch the GSR. You don't know what the GSR is. Now, the GSR, the galvanic skin response, will show significant responses, even if you subconsciously think you're like, they get into all kind of bullshit. It is all bullshit.
Even the name is annoying. Galvanic skin response. It's a very kind of, I just need to make this sound more scientific than sweating.
Yeah. Wait, here's what we're really going to do, boys. We're going to bring you in here, strap you up. We're going to watch you breathe, watch 2 fingers on your right hand sweat, and watch your heartbeat. And from that, we will conclude whether or not you've been telling the truth. Because that's all we need to know is we got to watch you breathe. We got to watch 2 fingers on your right hand sweat, and we got to watch your heartbeat. And we can draw all manner of wonderful conclusions from that sordid small amount of scientific data. In other words, we're measuring the fight or flight response. We're measuring your physiologic response to stress. And if you have it at the wrong time, son, you're fucked.
Now that the polygraph is pretty much outlawed in the private sector, like in terms of employment, obviously people who want to check their spouses for adultery or whatever, there's still an industry there. But
Oh, it's a big industry in the federal government.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So, I mean, what types of people are primarily victimized by it, and what do you?
Everyone in the United States federal government who wants a contract with the government that requires a security clearance, number one. Anybody who wants a job of intelligence or police work, number two. Anybody who's accused of anything, anybody who's accused of a sex crime, has to take it and pass it once a month and pay for it themselves or they get thrown back in prison. Oh, yeah. And if you're in Canada and you file an insurance claim, you got to pass a polygraph test in order to get the claim investigated. And guess who owns the polygraph firm? The insurance companies.
That's pretty shocking. So, I mean, you could do everything right by your insurance plan, pay all your premiums, and be completely truthful about it, and they'll just screw you over by getting a...
You get some boat. You lied on it. Well, did you start that fire yourself? No. Well, shit. He's lying. Yeah, don't pay yet. We got to investigate this. I guess them to use his money for as long, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Who knows? They'll finally end up having to pay. But it's bullshit, the much powers that you guys have.
The courts accept that in Canada if you kind of challenge your insurance company over that You know, generally what the state of play is when it goes to the courts?
No, I haven't heard about that in a while. Whether it's even still in effect, but it was pretty active here about 3-4 years ago.
Right. Okay, well, look, I think that's pretty much all I need to